Section 3. The Blue Water Navy. Humanity has kept its ancient sailing tradition, and part of that tradition has crept into their warships and how they operate. This is not to say that such things have hindered them. In fact, it has benefited them. This navy appears on every planet that significant bodies of water exist, or that are terraformed into existing. They include submarines, ships that operate below the surface, missile and gunboats with sizes ranging from simple patrol craft, no longer than a dozen metrons, to ships as large as entire buildings laid upon their sides, with railguns that can hit ships in orbit and deal lethal damage. They build their ships for both defense and to patrol against criminals or other issues. Now, as before, I will explain the use of human blue water naval craft and how they have changed the face of warfare. On HFY VI, there dwelt the people known as the Sharnik, a race of now extinct Carchahinus. They were pirates by their nature as predators. They struck from silence in the deep void and then disappeared before people could properly retaliate. The planet used to be called Shachar, but we know it as HFY VI after the Sharnik refused to surrender or yield in the face of invasion. They believed they could win any invasion, as between planetary shields and the depths of their oceans, they should have been invincible. They would have been right, if not for the humans' Blue Water Navy. The humans offered a solution: to deploy their Blue Water Navy and naval engineers from space onto the planet, and establish a beachhead on the small landmasses on the planet. We thought they were insane. Establishing a beachhead on a planet made of water, infested with pirate sentient, bipedal sharks who knew no rules of war, and would eat those they captured while they were still alive? Most found it suicidal. But we decided to let them try. The humans deployed submarines first, ships designed to dive under the water, and what was more interesting were the shields and weapons on the ship. Underwater, things like the human railguns, a weapon only they use, were ineffective due to drag and inaccuracy. Plasma weapons would boil the water and dissipate rapidly. Generally speaking, underwater combat became close quarters, except to the humans. The shark race found out what a human torpedo is. In space, we think of them as unguided large-sized warhead missiles. The humans call those rockets instead. To them, torpedoes are guided weapons that traverse the water, tracking by sonar, and in this case, LADAR. Yes, laser designation underwater. Imagine how crazy you would have to be to develop that. Much less get it to work. The Sharnik still refused to surrender, as their teeth, knives and spear guns for underwater combat failed to even phase these massive 500 macron-long vessels, shooting underwater missiles that are coded to look for your specific sound and electrical body signal. What was worse, when the Sharnik brought their own large-scale craft, we learned what a crazy Ivan is. Ambassador, I realize we are birds and underwater warfare is strange to us, so allow me to explain. You cannot rely upon your eyes looking out the window underwater. You need sonar, radar, ampullae of Lorenzini as the humans call it, the electrical sense underwater species have, or some other way to find your opponent at any range and with reliability. Sonar is the most common. Sharniks attempted to shadow the human submarines, to stay in the noise of their propulsion in order to hide from them. This way the Sharnik could follow them back to their base and deliver massive explosives against submarines and surface ships in dock. On Earth, however, this had been done before by humans hundreds of years ago, and the human captains who had such things being done to them developed a technique for this. Without warning, the captain of such ships would immediately turn their propeller to all reverse, spinning the ship around at full rudder, and fire a burst of active sonar pings to see if there was something behind them. Further, this often risked collisions if the shadowing ship was too close. You see, in water, you cannot just come to a stop and turn like you can do in space. Water has resistance, and now having the ship in front of you suddenly decide to do the opposite direction, by the time you react, if you are too close you will collide. If you are too far away, they will easily detect you, and are now facing the direction the weapons fire out of, with a perfect target lock. It is a gamble, one only the humans were willing to take. Humans knew that such a thing was a gamble, and it relied upon instinct to think you were being shadowed. A collision would be fatal to both ships. The Sharnik could swim away from a sinking vessel. The humans would be killed by drowning, water pressure, or secondary explosions. Yet they did this anyway, and caught the Sharnik off guard so many times it became standard practice in underwater warfare across 6 of the galactic nations within the Assembly. Only humans would think to risk a multi-million credit warship, 300 of their own men, and their own life on a hunch and gamble that their enemy wasn't following too close. The Sharnik are no more after this war, after their refusal to surrender over and over again despite losing, and their population slowly dying off without a formal surrender, despite the humans' attempts at what they call humanitarian efforts. The Sharnik, not understanding their enemy attempting to save them, refused, and eventually died off or reverted to a more primitive state. Further, the submariners are devilish in their ingenuity. The submarine, UHSS Barb, is to blame for the incident, let us say. Haraxus VII's transit route still hasn't been repaired due to this. Haraxus VII is a mainly ocean world, and so the humans did deploy their blue water fleet to secure the seas. However, Urini of the planet was still able to get supplies through, as the orbital space remained contested. The UHSS Barb had an idea, however. A very absurd one. You see, human underwater torpedo weapons are propelled by a combination of propeller and primitive rocket. Haraxus VII has a gravity that is only 40% that of the human homeworld, where these things were designed. Humans also have a torpedo for deploying their marines, in a rare instance of the human navies fully cooperating with their marines. The branch of the military I will discuss at the end of these documents. For now, this is a sampler of their insanity. Instead of using the torpedoes for their intended purpose, deploying troops from the submarine to the ground, they rigged their long-range water-to-space missiles to the torpedoes, externally from the ship. Now these marine deployment torpedoes only have oxygen for 1 hour. They each carry 4 marines. The submarine can deploy them in waves of 16 troops at a time. A new wave every 3 minutes. But the 1 hour of air is important, as these torpedoes were then launched into space. Without a warhead or explosive payload, the torpedoes were not intercepted due to the sensors believing they were escape pods. It is against rules of war to attack escape pods. They were launched not at the ships in space, but into the hyperlane relay, which of course accelerated the torpedoes into a spaceport where they cross its horizon. The process is automated, so long as the gate is on, and they were about to receive ships, so it was on. During the 10-second period while they were in the fold, they managed to find a set of incoming supply ships and troop transports coming to reinforce the Urini forces on and around Haraxus VII. How? It is still unknown. But they sheared their fold within microns and tied magnetic clamps to latch onto the vessels coming in. The Marines boarded the ships, neutralized the unprepared crews, and planted explosives which detonated after the Marine survivors took the escape pods of these vessels. They detonated the ships inside the relay event horizon. The resulting cascade of energy destroyed the relay, meaning no more vessels without their own spaceport drive could get to Haraxus VII. It became the first submarine to capture a space vessel and to destroy a vessel. Further, the UHSS Barb is the only vessel, water or space, to successfully destroy a ship inside a spacefold. It is also the only underwater vessel to hold the honorific of boarding a space vessel. Now I mentioned surface ships, and yes, humans have them. Let me explain about the space battleship Yamato. We thought the humans were just doing it as a homage, as they called it, to their culture from nearly 700 years ago. But in fact, no. The human service Blue Water Fleet travels by its own power through space. They use shielding and special seals, along with minimal crews during this period. Their ships can be towed as well into hyperspace tunnels or spatial folds. The human space battleship Yamato is different, as it was made to operate under its own power entirely. This includes its 9 cannons that are so large any one of them would normally have its barrel lengthened and run as a human spinal railgun cannon for a human destroyer or a light cruiser. But instead, this ship operates more like a rail spread gun, firing all guns with limited accuracy, but covering the area in near light-speed bolts and trails of rocks. Yes, they are technically refined tungsten steel alloy, but technically the humans are just flinging rocks really hard and fast at you, with extreme proficiency and destructive ability. But this thing travels with their fleet as a symbol, and is capable of landing on a water-based world, releasing those atmospheric seals, and acting as a standard Terran surface flagship. I wish I was kidding. That is the human Blue Water Navy. Superstitious, gut-sensing dwellers who can go into space when needed and deal with a species of underwater predators on their own homeworld. That is what you face there. If this letter has not convinced you, I will continue giving the information you requested. End Section 3. The Blue Water Navy. Sincerely, Admiral of the Fleet, Ricard. Admiral of the Fleet from circa 2402 to 2504. P.S. Ambassador, you have never known me for cowardice. Your previous letter was hurtful. I am formally requesting an apology and wish to know what the human ambassador has done to upset you so much. You are considering war with someone who has been an ally and friend to us in the past. It is also hurtful that you at least would not pass on my well wishes to Rear Admiral Hirohito. I have known her since she was but an XO with the rank of Lieutenant Commander, and she deserves to know I wish her well. If needed, Ambassador, I will log a diplomatic protest if these two things are not done. Further, if my message is not relayed verbatim, I will formally challenge you to a juqual in the sky over the embassy tomorrow.